Hello everybody, this is a video on schizophrenia. Now, I am a schizophrenic. I have been a schizophrenic now for almost 20 years. I was a late schizophrenic. Normally, nowadays, people are getting schizophrenia very young, even children. I got schizophrenia when I was 31. I'm much older now. The first symptoms of schizophrenia, I didn't recognize them as voices in my head. It was just negative thoughts. Thoughts that were very, very, very negative. All trying to belittle me. They were aggressive thoughts. Self-destructive, aggressive thoughts. Now, whether these thoughts were mine or not is a mystery. This developed, it went through various episodes. It wasn't just one episode. I'd have an episode, the first episode was on cannibalism. I imagined cannibalistic societies everywhere. In the hospitals, whenever I saw someone missing a leg, I thought that they were caught by a cannibalist shark who had power in the medical industry. And in that situation, they'd go to a hospital, they'd get him, they'd say a cancer in the leg. It was all false, of course, just because they wanted to eat part of his leg. That was the first sort of thing. And they wanted to convert me into cannibalism. They threatened my arm. They threatened to cut off my left arm, the voices. And, well, I went through about a year where I just felt this incredible weirdness with my left arm because I just kept thinking it was going to get cut off. Sometimes I was certain they were going to cut it off when I was in the hospital for an episode or so. And, well, the episodes were, sometimes they'd last about 2 weeks, a month, and then I'd have normality for a couple of months, then I'd get another one, and so on. So they did disrupt my life. I was hospitalized various times, and yes, that was the first episode. The first episode was the cannibalism. Then the second episode, the second major theme, then the cannibalism thoughts just disappeared. And I went into a really negative, which is what I first started talking about, a really negative self-criticism, really, really destructive. It was very, very painful. This one lasted for about 3 years. No, again, on and off. Well, this one was more constant. It went up and down, it had its peaks. And from there, it went to, I had a period of time where I was more or less okay. And then the voices came. And this is when I actually started communicating with them. At first, the voices were very, very negative, trying to destroy my point of view. And there, I argued with them, and they had this sort of tactic where I'd use logic and they wouldn't accept it. I'd had perfectly reasonable logic and they wouldn't accept it. So this went on until I just said that their arguments were banal, really. Their arguments weren't all that impressive at that stage. But then I kept arguing with them, and finally they gave in and helped me out on my view. I had this view of how to save the world from global warming and all that. And, well, they helped me out on my view, but we failed in the end. We went on this escapade through the streets where I would take possession of certain buildings and they would all give me ideas on what to do with the building in my head. And then it all collapsed. It wasn't successful. The whole proposition my that was, I believe, the fourth stage. Then came the hallucinations. This is where things just got. There was an entire, how could I call it? A whole story, an entire story leading up to this event. I will not mention the story because, ooh, one of the things I will say about there are no limits. They will go beyond all accepted social norms. These thoughts, they can be very, very extreme. Oh my. So certain things I dare not mention. But the culmination point I will mention, which is, I find it funny now, but at the time I didn't find it funny at all. It was quite serious. I ended up in this battle, with what I call the aliens. Now, there were basically translucent faces in the sky, thousands of them. The sky was full of them, and they were all very angry, and they were all trying to get to me. And they first hurled insults, and then they started zapping energy at me from their foreheads. And I was on the street, and every time they zapped me, it hurt. And then instinctively, I zapped them back from my forehead, and I started zapping them from my forehead. And they every time I hit one of them, they went, oh, and it hurt them too. And we just kept zapping each other for what seemed like hours. And I was in a world of pain. Oh, it was a sort of a spiritual, psychological pain. Now, how does one get into these predicaments? That was rather funny. There was a battle, really. But how does one end up in these predicaments? All the stories they tell you that make you believe, these voices that you hear, they have a power of convincing that you would not believe. They reach you, and they somehow make you believe it's real. It's true. Somehow. So you could get let off into all the weirdest sort of stories. At least this has been my experience. But the first stages are the negative stages. This really, the ones that I think test your character, really, whether you can take an ordeal. I think that whatever this is that's doing this, it is a debate. The psychiatrics view on this is that it's in your head, it's an imbalance. But wow, these stories are phenomenal, let me tell you. They're extreme, and not certain if should be shared. They defend just about everybody because they're so extreme. But it takes you into a different world, and you interact in there, and the world has sense. There is a sort of logic to it. And the problem and why it is called a disease is because when you're in these worlds, you are so immersed in them that you have absolutely no way of functioning in the world that you're in physically. Now, this world of fantasy where you see things, what is it? They say it's not real and that's that. But when you're living it, let me tell you something, it seems more real than what you're living here. What you're living here is a more stable reality where conventions are held and there's a form of normality. That reality that I existed in was a total anarchy. Anything goes. There's no taboo. There's nothing they won't break. Oh, they're horrible. I call them the demons, whatever they are. This has been my way of adapting to having the experience of living these things. I did not choose to do this. I was not on any type of drug when I was going through these hallucinations or experiences, and I lived them. They were real to me. I have to adapt to this because those experiences, it's like being in a war zone. The normal conventions of society are not the same as the war conventions, but I do believe they should have some form of war convention in the state of war. There are certain things that are done and certain things that even they won't do. But in this reality, in the view reality, there were just no limits. But it also, I've emphasized a lot of the negative because that's what I remember. But I must say, even though I don't remember it as well, there were a lot of very positive feelings, particularly with my Save the World sort of a story. In that one, when we were envisioning the project, I was not alone. I was conversing with sometimes hundreds of beings. I don't know what they were. Sometimes I saw them, sometimes I didn't. And there were moments, I don't remember them, and I don't remember the solutions we came to, where we saw that, yes, eureka! We can survive global warming. And those moments were spectacular moments. I'd say some of the best in my life, when you have a feeling that you can actually accomplish something of that grandeur. Oh, it was an incredible feeling. So I've had incredibly bad feelings with schizophrenia and incredibly good feelings with schizophrenia. And the problem with both of them is that they're just about impossible to apply to our everyday world. Because in our everyday world, stories really don't mean that much anymore. And these are all stories. Stories. I've written some schizophrenic stories, influence stories, where there are hallucinations and visions. In particular, I will mention the alien introduction. It's on my shop, and there will be a link below. It's not a very long text. It's a text where I am sort of introducing what I am going to write now. I'm seeking for inspiration in the direction I'm going in on this particular project. The Alien. You have to read the introduction to understand what it's about, so I will make no further mention of what it could be about. And I've mentioned how convincing these voices are. Now, what else should I mention? I should also mention the effects I feel now when I'm on medication now, and I finally found the medication that stopped all of this. And so this is when I had the opportunity to write more about it, because they were... I don't write about my experiences. It's a fiction what I'm writing, based on extreme experiences being spread out till you, oh my, they spread you out so much, and it's almost as if when you're at those extreme points where you don't know if you're going to make it through or not, because there were those points as well. It was as if you noticed that their attention on you was very, very, very particular. And they were deciding, should he make it through or not? And in my case, they always let me make it through. I survived all the ordeals. They were incredibly... I don't remember most of it. I remember some of it, some of the ordeals, but there were so many. A story could last a week, a story could last a month, a story could last a year. They rarely went longer than a year. And I had so many. I mean, I've had almost 20 years of experience in this, and I've had so many of these stories until they got the medication right. And, well, I'm inspired to write now. I have been. I've reached some conclusions. All these stories led me into a bit of mysticism. I've eventually had acquired an interest for mysticism, certain religions, Buddhism, Hinduism, because especially Hinduism, is very story oriented. And I've also acquired an affinity for the Tao Te Ching, Lao Tzu, and in particular Chuang-Tzu, who was more story oriented. So for my identity now, stories have become important because I've lived through such extreme stories that I've identified with. I mean, when you're living it, there's no way not to. Well, have a look at my shop. See what you see there. It's in construction. I've got a lot more to put on there, but I've got to organize myself a bit. It's all on the computer. Oh, photos and texts mainly. And on my shop there is also a art section of photography. In the middle of my ordeals, I photographed models, and I worked through them with the Photoshop, and I developed a pop art style photographic exposition. What is what I would like it to be, but right now it's on my shop on the Etsy. That I don't sell digital files, that's only in print. And there's no framing or matting on that print. The price is high. Well, I'd say the price is what it should be. Neither high nor low. Some might consider it high because they're not used to paying so much for art, but this is art. And it's art through extraordinary situations. And also, my Photoshop work on it is very particular because I was able to find forms within the pictures on some of these. I did not paint those on there. I found them. I copy pasted and filled with the paint, and I don't remember much well right now how I've done it because I had a very hallucinogenic experience between when I finished those in 2014, and I believe it's 2015 I had possibly my biggest episode ever, which is the battle with the aliens that I previously mentioned. And after that I tried to go back and retouch a photo to make more art, and I just didn't know how to do it, and I don't remember how I did it, and it's a mystery. But I did find those forms, patterns within the photograph. Sometimes I thought it was light, but then they were geometrical sometimes, and well, I don't know how I did it, but I found those forms within the photographs. It's after my imagination, because because of my schizophrenic experiences, I have quite a vivid imagination. Well, I've always had a vivid imagination, but I think it just got very put to use with my episodes, my schizophrenic episodes. And well, yes, my shop. Well, if I've roused your interest, please do visit my shop. You don't have to buy anything. It's just interesting to look at what I've got on there. I've only got about 30 items on there right now, but that's going to expand to about 100 soon. So, well, there it is. I hope you've enjoyed my honest account of being a schizophrenic. And, well, there it is.